Have you seen these zaps, man, and these lightnings and these chains and these, well, these are all like really fun words. But you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the full lightning sorceress build. Why, you ask? Well, why not? I mean, sure, it sounds a little bit like a meme, maybe because it slightly is, but you would be surprised how much damage you can do by just going full lightning if that's your thing. Maybe you just are opposed to having frost or fire skills. And if you are, then this is the video for you, because I will go into what you need to actually build a full lightning sorceress and actually kill stuff, get loot, level up, do all of that cool stuff. And it's actually the cool part about it is it's super cheap and easy. You need like 3 skills and 2 legendaries, and that's about it. And even those are not necessarily mandatory, so it's very easy. You're not reliant on RNG, you're not reliant on farming, anything like that. So let's hit it up. First of all, in terms of skills, you should probably start with Spark. Out of all of them, Spark is probably the best, especially if you're playing on hardcore. Spark gives you the range that you need to, you know, fill up those bars, those things. Well, it doesn't really give you mana, but it is a filler ability while you wait for your mana to recharge, especially on lower levels. Enhanced Spark is obviously your next choice, because why have 2 abilities when you can just make one stronger? And you can also have one of the capstones, which is not necessary early on to unlock the next ability, but it is really good as you level up and you have spare points, and that is Flickering Spark. Flickering Spark is one of the mechanics that gives you crackling energy, and this is probably a good point to mention what this is. One of the core identities of lightning is that you have this opportunity to form crackling energies. Crackling energies are essentially little lightning orbs on the ground that you see that you can pick up. They kind of look like health potions and stuff like that. Now, once you pick up a crackling energy, you see a bar on top of your action bar button things with 3 little lightning buttons. Each lightning button is essentially a crackling energy. Now, when a nearby enemy is close to you enough, these energies spawn lightning bolts towards the target and zap them for damage passively. So you don't really necessarily have to control it. They go specifically to targets that they can damage. So it's all pretty smart, all pretty seamless, but it is really fun to see all of these zappiness go towards the target, and it adds to the feel of lightning. And you don't really need to do anything else except, you know, just play, and these will naturally damage stuff, and it's really fun. The next ability is we go into the core skills and you take Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning is by far the best core ability that you can use, especially for lightning, and it does massive damage. You will of course get Enhanced Chain Lightning, and one of the capstones that we recommend is Destructive Chain Lightning, because this also gives you a chance to form crackling energy, which is really good, especially for big AoE clears. Sure, you can get the other capstone if you want for Chain Lightning, if you want bosses, but this is so far what we'd really recommend when you go for the lightning build, because crackling lightning is just really good. Moving on, of course, you'll want to take 1 point into teleport, because why not? Because all sorcerers should have teleport regardless if they go full fire or full frost, and teleport is lightning, doesn't really matter. Sure, it does some damage, but ideally you want to use teleport to move around, and especially if you're playing hardcore, it will get you out of stuns, CCs, and all of that good stuff, which is invaluable to make sure that your sorceress survives more than mine. Next, although not in this particular order, you will want to get Static Discharge. Static Discharge is essentially a passive, and this makes your crits give you crackling energy, which is once again what we discussed about the crackling energy. It is really good. You'll also have another passive that you unlock by doing this, which is Invigorating Conduit, making crackling energy give you mana. Since you don't really have a resource generation like, let's say, Barbarian or Necromancer, you will want to gain a little bit of mana from different kind of things, and picking up crackling energy is one of these things, specifically if you go for all of these crackling energy generators. And to kind of cap it off, although this is just the beginning of the build, is take Unstable Currents as your ultimate. Clearly, we're playing full lightning, but this is really cool, especially if you take the upgrade to it, Primal Unstable Currents, that gives you 25% attack speed, obviously when you have Unstable Currents up. This is an amazing ultimate. It definitely fulfills the lightning fantasy. When you pop it and you use a lightning ability, you essentially spawn a random lightning ability from from your arsenal. Whether you have points in it or not, it doesn't really matter. Now, obviously, some lightning abilities that you spawn are weaker than others. Obviously, we would have talked about them in this guide if they were really strong, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's chaos everywhere, it's lightning everywhere, everything is getting fried, you get loot and gold all over on your screen. It is fantastic, it is hilarious, and it's super, super fun. And it's essentially amazing when you have a lot of attack speed, which we'll go into as we go into the items as well. In terms of enchantments, you have essentially two main options depending on what you want to do. The main one that we recommend is Chain Lightning. Whenever you spend 100 mana, you have a free Chain Lightning cast out. Now, obviously, by this point, you might also have a bunch more points into the actual Chain Lightning ability, which is actually really good. It's your main source of damage dealing, but this also helps with bosses and with other things that we'll mention in a second. The other enchantment that you can get is strictly for monster farming. It's not specifically for bosses because as opposed to other Diablo games, bosses usually find themselves in isolated rooms and not all of them spawn minions, although most of them do. What a spark does once you put it on an enchant, it makes killing an enemy give you a 10% chance to form crackling energy. Once again, we talked about it, crackling energy is really cool, but it doesn't really happen or proc a lot on boss fights, so you're not going to get much value out of it. So when you know you're going to go into a boss fight, or if you just want to be prepared for it, Chain Lightning is overall better and it doesn't restrict you in certain encounters. Now, speaking of items, really legendaries. I mean, we could talk about stats and all of that, but that's not really important as you level up and gain gear until you reach max level in endgame. But until then, the two kind of main legendaries that you want, although you do have a bunch of options, is first of all Rapid Loop. This is nuts. This is so good, especially for this, because this gives your basic skills 32% attack speed baseline. Now it says attack speed, but it's also cast speed, since we did have cast rate and cast speed in different Diablo games, so it might get a little bit confusing because you're not attacking stuff with your staff or your wand or whatever, right? You are shooting things, and obviously we mentioned, and of course we mentioned in the Unstable Currents Ultimate, whenever you use lightning ability, you spawn random lightning stuff, especially if you're using Spark, for instance. You'll get massive attack speed from the 25% baseline with the Primal Unstable Currents. With the 32% from the ring, you have at least 57% increased attack speed on your Spark, meaning that when you probably use Unstable Currents, Spark is probably the best one if you just want to spam the light show disco a festival of lightning abilities with this amount of attack speed. Not to mention, it's just a lot of damage. Recharging Ring is the other one that you can go for. This makes Chain Lightning give you mana when it bounces off of you. This is obviously a little bit more specific. Obviously, it's really good for bosses. In AoE, Chain Lightning doesn't bounce off you a lot. So the way Chain Lightning works, if this needs to be explained, is you fire Chain Lightning, it hits a target, it bounces to another target. If there are no other enemy targets, it bounces back to you. Obviously, it won't damage you, but then it bounces back to the said target again, and this essentially gives you some single target damage on bosses. Now, obviously, with the greater Chain Lightning capstone that we mentioned, this makes you make your Chain Lightning do a little bit more damage as well. But also, if you have this ring, especially for bosses, you gain mana back, so that means you just fire more Chain Lightning over the course of a boss fight, which is really good, considering that this is one of the best ways that Sorceress can actually kill bosses in Diablo 4. Now, there's also an additional one that you can try out. I definitely looted this, but it felt a little bit too much overkill, not to mention that it kind of works against what we have so far, is Accelerating Circle. It's another ring which makes crits with core skills, aka Chain Lightning, give 30% attack speed for 3 seconds. Now, this kind of requires you to have a little bit more crit, so it's a little bit more reliable, and that's probably a little bit harder to do at early game, and you might, I don't know, I can see this replaced with Rapid Loop, because you will have to use a lot of Chain Lightning, especially if you want to make this good. You will probably want Chain Lightning to refund you some of that mana, unless you just extract these aspects and put it on different gear. And this is pretty much all the legendaries that you need. There are obviously other legendaries that you can get, and you might see me use other legendaries like the Hydra legendary to use like a free Hydra every now and again. It helps with just like an extra source of immobile damage that's pretty much passive. You don't need to worry about it, and it's just fine. I mean, it gives you a lot of room to put a lot of stuff. Sure, some of this is not necessarily lightning, and you can still get more lightning skills if you want to, but you don't need them. These are basically your bread and butter. And in terms of the playstyle, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, considering that you have like 3-4 main skills. You spend your mana on Chain Lightning, and that's pretty good. You use Spark as your filler, and of course you'll be generating crackling energy every now and again, and you move around picking up that crackling energy, maybe even use teleport to pick it up, although I probably would recommend saving teleport to escape or reposition properly than just picking up crackling lightning. And of course, when you're fighting a big pack, 2 packs, elites, bosses, you pop unstable current. Now, depending on what legendaries you have equipped, during unstable current, normally if you have rapid loop, you will want to just pretty much use Spark. Obviously, you're not going to waste your mana. You're going to fire Chain Lightning, specifically since you probably already have Chain Lightning as your enchantment. You want to spend that mana, you want to generate more Chain Lightning, so that's really, really good, especially if you have Recharging Ring. Also makes you get some of that mana back. But outside of that, you'll have 50% attack speed on Spark, and you will fire all of the light show in the game. And this is pretty much how you can get your lightning out there. Do all the lightning stuff. It is fun. It is so satisfying to shoot all of this stuff up. Obviously, I haven't touched even half of the lightning skills because the other ones are just a little bit underwhelming. Maybe we'll have a video on that because they feel like they need a bit of a help, a little bit of a buff, and maybe you should probably steer clear away from them so far. They might work better in late game. But this is how you do your lightning sorceress on hardcore. It's really good, especially if you have extra abilities like ice armor or teleport or frost nova, because you do have room for other abilities to use that gives you a little bit of survivability and utility during big encounters, so you don't die in a stun lock, which is the worst thing for hardcore. Hope you enjoyed it. Check our channel for other videos, like and subscribe. Love you all and see you next time. Bye bye.